The Earth's rotation might be imperceptible to humans, but that doesn't mean your head won't spin when you discover we're living in a pretty weird world. On today's show, we're going to be diving into the history of microstates. A state is defined as an area ruled by a government. States can be as minor as your hometown or as mighty as Mother Russia. In this context, size doesn't really matter. Microstates are a curious microcosm of humanity in general. They pack all the money, power, fame, greed, and religion of larger countries into their bite-sized borders. Follow me on a journey from Monaco to San Marino. Along the way, we'll explore a microstate that was still fighting World War I during World War II, 50s starlet Grace Kelly, who transitioned from Hollywood royalty to literal royalty, and how the walls of the Vatican City became a safe haven for bad behavior with our list of the most rebellious popes in history. I'm Doug Sharp, and we're living in a pretty weird world. The microstate of Liechtenstein is so small, it's the only country that resides entirely in the Alps. It doesn't even have an army or an airport, and this might explain how it was accidentally invaded. In 2007, 170 Swiss soldiers accidentally crossed the border of the 62-square-mile country. Before Liechtenstein knew what hit them, the troops had withdrawn and Switzerland officially apologized. Liechtenstein is slightly smaller than Washington, D.C., and had no real choice but to accept the apology. The country is so small that in 1868, 62 years after becoming self-governing with the collapse of the Holy Roman Empire, they dissolved their army of 80 men. This means the country has enjoyed over a century and a half of neutrality. They even managed to stay out of both world wars, thanks in part to their connection to Switzerland, who Germany didn't want to provoke into joining the conflict. Liechtenstein shares a border with Switzerland and Austria, who are both famously neutral. However, Switzerland has made accidental Liechtenstein aggression a bit of a bad habit. In 1968, Switzerland accidentally threw 5 mortar bombs at Liechtenstein's only ski resort. A Liechtenstein official said, "Of course we shall protest, but only mildly, because it was obviously an accident." Very harsh words. In 1976, 75 Swiss soldiers took a wrong turn and accidentally wound up in the world's 6th smallest country. The under siege Liechtensteiners politely informed the Swiss soldiers of their mistake and offered them some beer. If Liechtenstein seems low-key, it's for a good reason. The country benefits from the second highest GDP per capita in Europe, and while it's often considered a hub for private banking and wealth management, nearly 40% of their GDP comes from export-oriented manufacturing. Liechtenstein's manufacturing sector will really give you something to chew on. This country of less than 40,000 citizens produces 60 million fake teeth per year, which accounts for about 20% of all the fake teeth sold in the world. Andorra is nestled in the Pyrenees mountain range in southwestern Europe. At 180 square miles, it's one tiny country. However, it dwarfs most of the other microstates on this list. In fact, Andorra is the largest microstate in Europe. But even though Andorra is a big fish in a small pond, it still has those charming eccentricities we expect of smaller countries, like the fact that it's ruled by 2 princes. The official term for their form of government is a parliamentary co-principality, and that means both the Bishop of Urgell and the President of France are royalty here. Due to this co-principality, Andorra is a multilingual country. Spanish, Portuguese, and French are all commonly spoken. However, the official language of the country is Catalan, and it's the only country in the world that claims Catalan as its official tongue. Because of its size and relationship with Spain and France, Andorra has no need for an army. However, they did declare war on Germany in World War I. Ironically, they were in the middle of World War I, long past the last battles of World War II. It was reported that Andorra was accidentally excluded from the Treaty of Versailles, even though they remained neutral during World War II. They were technically in a state of war with Germany until 1958. The Vatican City is the smallest microstate in the world, both in size and population. The city is completely surrounded by Rome, and stands at a mere 109 acres, and only has 800 official citizens. The Vatican City's low citizenship numbers are due to its strict rules. It's run like most countries, with a postal service, legal system, and government, but there's no birthright citizenship. There isn't even a hospital within the state. To obtain citizenship, you must be appointed to a role within the Holy See, the governing body of the Vatican. Even then, your citizenship only lasts as long as your official duties are required. The Vatican City is one of the few remaining places in the world where the government is ruled by a religious leader in the name of God. The Pope isn't just the leader of the global Catholic Church, he's the absolute monarch of the Vatican City. With this type of power comes great responsibility. While the Pope is generally beloved and respected the world over, there have been a number of badly behaving bishops of Rome. Let's take a deeper dive into the weird world of rebel popes. Pope Benedict III ruled 3 times, from 1032 to 1044, 1 month in 1045, and one last time from 1047 to 1048. To put it mildly, Benedict's rule was unsavory. The corrupt pope left his position twice for money, he was accused of rape, adultery, sodomy, and bestiality, and was even reported to host wild orgies in the papal palace. He abdicated his throne for the last time to Mary, and was excommunicated from the church for taking bribes. Future Pope Victor III said Benedict's rule was so vile, so foul, that I shudder to think of it. Becoming Pope at the ripe age of 18, John XII would rule from 955 to 964. Youthful indiscretion took on a new meaning during the reign of John XII. He was known for rape, incest, and turning the palace into a brothel. His bad behavior wasn't strictly lust-driven. John called upon the pagan gods when playing dice, made toasts with the devil, and had his rivals mutilated. John's hard living caught up to him when he was beaten to death by the spouse of a mistress when he was only 27. Sergius III's reign as Pope is considered the first appointment in a 60-year period of papal history known as the Rule of Harlots or the Pornocracy. From 904 to 911, Sergius compromised the integrity of the church by promoting ill-qualified family members to influential positions. He also murdered his rivals, including a former pope, while fathering an illegitimate son with his mistress. But perhaps Sergius's worst sin was his involvement in digging up the body of a former pope and putting the corpse on trial and then beheading it. It wasn't Pope Formosus's time on the throne that defined him. It was the circus that took place after his 891 to 896 papacy. In one of the most insane moments in the history of Catholicism, Pope Formosus was taken from his grave 9 months after his death and forced to stand trial. In an act of political theater, Formosus's rotting corpse was dressed in papal clothing, propped up on a throne, and accused of perjury and violating the laws of the Catholic Church. The mock trial went so far as to have a deacon actually represent and speak for the dead pope. Scholars believe the root of this trial was political. This was a tense era for the Holy Roman Empire, and the papacy held very real political power. Formosus was found guilty, and every act and measure he made during his rule was nullified. The 3 fingers on his right hand that he used to bless people were chopped off, his papal clothing was torn from his body, and his corpse was paraded through the streets of Rome before being thrown into the Tiber River. His body was eventually retrieved and reburied. But poor Pope Formosus was not left alone to rest. He was taken from his grave a second time and forced to stand trial again, this time by Sergius III, and we know how that played out. Take a day trip from the Vatican and you'll arrive at San Marino. At 23.6 square miles, this Italian microstate is the 5th smallest country in the world, and its roots date back to 301. It's also the oldest surviving republic in the world. San Marino was founded by stonemason Saint Marinus. Originally from Dalmatia, he sought refuge from religious persecution at the hands of the Romans, building a Christian community on Mount Titano. San Marino's conveniently difficult mountain terrain and savvy diplomacy helped it navigate many chaotic and intense eras in European history. The microstate remained sovereign during the medieval era, the Napoleonic Wars, the unification of Italy, and both world wars. The country's measured approach to foreign policy might have something to do with its unique political quirks. While largely symbolic now, San Marino elects 2 heads of state, known as the Captains Regent, to govern jointly. They've been elected every 6 months since 1243, and this ensures no one individual gains too much power or authority. Abraham Lincoln was so taken with the history of San Marino that he wrote a letter to the Captains Regent in 1861 that read, "Although your dominion is small, nevertheless your state is one of the most honored throughout history." In response, San Marino made Honest Abe an honorary citizen. But Lincoln never made a trip to San Marino. Not many do. It's one of the least visited countries in Europe. And this might have something to do with the fact that you need to take a cable car up the side of a mountain to get to the capital city. If you've ever taken a walk through Central Park in New York City, you know what it's like to walk across the entire microstate of Monaco, a gambling haven of 0.8 square miles located on the northern coast of the Mediterranean Sea. Monaco's small stature stems from a financial deal they made with the French. In 1861, in order to help the country out of a dire financial situation, 95% of Monaco's territory was sold to France for 4 million francs. Unfortunately, this multi-million franc injection wasn't enough to keep Monaco financially solvent. In order to build up its financial resources, Prince Florestan I, with encouragement from Princess Caroline, decided to stake their bets on turning Monaco into a destination for gambling. After a few false starts, the Casino de Monte Carlo was built in 1878, and it quickly became a world-renowned spot for gambling, jump-starting economic development and attracting wealthy clientele. In the 1920s, the notorious arms dealer Basil Zakharov was involved in running the Monte Carlo casino. For more on Zakharov, including his approach to arming both sides of the same war with faulty weapons, check out my World's Worst Arms Dealer video. While people across the world travel to Monaco to place bets, you won't find any Monegasques playing slots or poker. Princess Caroline insisted that citizens should not be allowed in the casinos. Instead, all gambling revenue comes from visitors. In exchange for the strict gambling laws, Monegasques don't pay any income tax. Today, the Monegasques are some of the wealthiest citizens in the world, with an average wealth of around $10 million. Gambling made Monaco wealthy and notorious, but it wouldn't be until 1955 when the microstate would enter the world stage. This was the year Prince Rainier met American actress Grace Kelly at the Cannes Film Festival in France. Kelly and Rainier married in 1956 in a ceremony the press called the wedding of the century. Kelly would never act again, giving birth to 3 children and spending her time as a cultural ambassador heavily involved in charity. Grace Kelly would die tragically in a car accident in 1982, but her daughter, Princess Stephanie, would be bit by the showbiz bug. In 1986, Stephanie released her single, Uragan, that would go on to sell 5 million copies. These stories show that you don't need a vast, sprawling empire to exert world influence. Sometimes all you need is diplomacy, gambling, religious leaders, movie stars, multiple princes, and fake teeth. Microstates serve as a remnant of a bygone era, when Europe was littered with principalities and the world's power was much more decentralized. That some of these states have continued to this day goes to show that good things really do come in small packages.